You're here because you want to learn how to paint, right? I'm going to give you guys step-by-step instructions on how to paint. And like all things, you have to plan, so the first thing is sketching. It can be intimidating, but when you're sketching, the only thing you should be focusing on is the big shapes. This is exactly why you need a reference. And on the side here, I'm showing you my process so that you guys can see what I'm thinking about and visualizing when I'm, using my pencil. In the sketching process, you want to make sure you're actually drawing very lightly, because the majority, if not all of the things, will basically be erased and painted over. And it's okay to take a little bit of time, because the better you do here, the better your process will be when actually painting. Leads me into painting. So when you're painting, you actually want to use a brush that you think is way too big. You might be wondering, well, the paintbrush you're using is relatively small, but compared to the painting itself, it's pretty big. This is because you use large brushes for blocking out colors and shapes, and you use small brushes for detailing, and right now we are not detailing. Goal right now is to just mix the right colors and to block out whatever you see in your reference, and it doesn't have to be perfect. This is when artists start to get a little bit intimidated, they don't really know what to do, but this is when you should be having the most fun. But even though you're having fun, I'm gonna give you guys my biggest tips. So the first thing you wanna make sure you're doing is, again, blocking out really big shapes. Not only does it give you the impression of being confident in whatever you're doing, it also makes you kind of loosen up as an artist. Another tip is always doing the background first, because if you don't do the background first, you're going to be struggling to get on the outer corner of the edges in later processes. Another tip is don't focus too much on it looking just like the reference. If you treat your art more like a study, you won't be as intimidated that it doesn't look just like your reference. Another thing I recommend, which might be a little bit controversial, is don't use any water. Personally, I only use water to dilute and thin out the paint, which of course is the last thing we want to do in this process. So when you're in this stage, I recommend keeping these tips in mind. So how to properly mix colors is the next topic. Now again, you don't want to focus too much on the colors, but these are the colors I used in order to get this pinkish color, and I actually added some yellow because it was more of a peach than a pink. In school, they teach you that yellow and blue make green, which it does, but it kind of makes like a almost very bright green, which isn't really found in nature. So instead, what I recommend is mixing yellow and black. This gives you a more navy green, and it looks more realistic in nature. You just want to make sure you don't add too much black, because then it'll get muddy, just like any other color that's mixed with black. If you made it this far in the video, make sure you like and subscribe. It is much appreciated. I appreciate anybody who just takes the time to watch the video, but the extra support definitely does help these small young artists, including me, so thanks for tuning in. But in this process, I'm just blocking out colors. I'm doing the same thing. I'm trying not to get into my head, because the main problem about artists is us. Because the problem is we have and set these own expectations for ourselves, and when we don't reach them, or we are struggling to reach them, we start to panic and overthink. The problem is we don't realize that we are hindering ourselves within the process by having that mentality. So loosen up and have fun when you're painting. Another thing you want to make sure you're doing is always looking at your reference. The more you look at it, the more information you're going to find about it, the more details you're going to add, and depending on how detailed you want it, you're obviously going to spend more time on it. And you can see that the color choices I'm using are actually less vibrant than the actual reference itself. Remember, you're an artist, you're a designer, and you're allowed to change certain things you want about the reference. And in this case, I chose to use a little bit more pastel-like colors. So notice how I actually changed brushes. This is because now I have the intention of being a little bit more precise and detailed. Decision is up to you when you're ready to switch off and be a little bit more precise. Sometimes I even use the precision brush, and then I go back to the bigger brush, and I kind of go back and forth between the two, which is totally fine. Don't restrict yourself. Decide to switch on over to the thinner brush once I'm satisfied with the colors and the placement of everything, and that's what I'm going to recommend for you guys to do as well. Now I'm going to mention common mistakes I see when people are painting. Aside from using the incorrect brush size, not using a reference, and not sketching prior, another thing I notice is that artists don't know how to step back sometimes. This happens usually when you are like, should I detail more? Should I fix this? Quote unquote, fix this. And then you end up messing it up. Quote unquote, messing it up. My advice to avoiding this is taking breaks, stepping back. Or even asking somebody else for advice. How does it look? Does it look good? Should I stop? Should I add something? Usually they're gonna tell you no, or they might give you advice, but I'm gonna explain how I detail. Now, when I'm detailing, I'm still summarizing, and let me explain. Now, there's certain parts about images that are important and certain things that aren't important. And as artists, we are kind of illusioners, if that's even a word. But we make illusions. We know that this isn't really a flower. So you should be asking yourself, what can I do? What can I add to make it look more like a flower? So in this case, adding the stems, adding the dots, and you don't need to add too much information, too much detailing for it to actually look like a flower. Understand that it doesn't have to be super detailed because your goal is to make it look like a flower and for it to look nice, not for it to look exactly like the reference. So while I'm painting, I'm asking myself, well, what am I satisfied with? What do I not mind leaving alone? What would I like to do to enhance this painting? And I decided to work on the background and add lighter shades of yellow and lighter shades of green, kind of sharpen the edges, but I kind of left the flowers alone, which I am forever grateful for. Again, if you enjoyed or learned something, please make sure you follow. It is much appreciated. Now at this point, I'm satisfied, I'm done, I'm tired, my back is hurting. So I went ahead and I pulled off that tape, which is such a beautiful feeling. Like, do you understand how much of a beautiful feeling that is? Let me turn on the sound for y'all to hear it. Now, isn't that just beautiful? Common mistakes, tips to improve your painting process, and now it is time for me to throw you guys out of your nest and hopefully you guys fly. But this isn't the end for me. If you're interested in how to turn it into this, definitely like and subscribe because in the next video, I'll be showing you guys how to transform it into a beautiful print as you saw above. Remember to stay blessed, stay hydrated, and I'll see you in the next one.